What's up? Hey, hello, everyone. Wow. So today we are back going to be talking about Survivor Season 39, Island of the Idols, Episode 10. And this was a jammed pack episode. So my name is Rachel.
And I'm Alyssa, and we had Island of the Idols again with no Island of the Idols. The only time we saw Rob and Sandra was during the tribal councils, and I gotta say, I was kind of annoyed with Island of the Idols at the beginning, but now I'm like, I kind of miss them when they're not here. So,
Rob and Sandra are getting the purple edit, where maybe some other players should be getting the purple edit instead. But I don't know, especially after last week's sort of fail of an Island of the Idols segment with Jamal literally getting screwed over with that kind of lose your vote before anything even happens. I'm like, okay, we can take a break from it, especially if their lessons are going to be useless.
yeah. I think the thing about Jamal was that his lesson kind of happened before he got to the island, where it was like, if something seems too good to be true, it is. Like, come on, that you should have had a better lesson than that. So, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's like now that we're at the merge, there are some people who get like it can't just be they give any old stock lesson. I feel like if people are gonna come to Island of the Idols after the merge, Rob and Sandra need to give them a lesson specific to them. And I guess that would just be a lot of work for the producers.
Yeah, I guess maybe that's a flaw with Island of the Idols because I feel like at the beginning the lessons were, better, I guess. I think fire is probably the most important one, the best one to have an Island of the Idols segment on. Obviously, that's why it's on the premiere episode. Doing the stupid steal fire from camp that Vince had to do, like all of that weird stuff, like I don't know. It just makes the game more gimmicky. And I feel like it just seems more scripted because it's like, okay, they're going to go to Island of the Idols and Boston, Rob, and Sandra are doing nothing out there but practicing what they're going to say to these people. So it just feels very like not real because it's fake.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just like it's one of those things where I feel like if they were gonna have this segment, they should have committed to it. So
Yeah, so starting at the top of the episode, we see Karishma, who got a lot of screen time this episode. And I think this goes to show that maybe the pretending to be a goat strategy could work out in the end, potentially, question mark. I'm intrigued by Karishma. Her edit has been very interesting, I think, to say the least, from the beginning of the season where everyone was like bashing on her for not doing much and almost getting voted out like 3 tribals in a row, not being that athletic. Everyone was hating on her to now. I feel like this episode is sort of the turning tide in her underdog story kind of thing. Like, oh, she was super bad at the beginning, but now Karishma is finding her wings and she is going to be on the up and up, which I think it's interesting. She was my winner pick from the preseason. So I was like, okay, this is what I wanted from Karishma when Alyssa and I on the podcast were like, Karishma needs to speak up for herself and make moves if she wants to play or win the game. And I think her finding an idol this episode potentially, could be her saving grace. And I'm interested to see what Karishma can do with all of this that she has right now.
I still don't think that Karishma is going to win though, just because even with the edits she's been giving, like it still consistently points out like how lazy she is and how people don't like her. And like I think Missy said at some point this episode, like no one's gonna give Karishma $1 million. And it's like, yeah, even if Karishma does goat her way to the final three, I cannot imagine a final three scenario where she wins. So
I think it's interesting because, like you're saying, we see Nora bashing on Karishma at the beginning of the episode, and I was sort of like, oh, I don't know, that didn't really sit right with me because, like, Nora, I guess we don't really see what you're doing out there as well, but okay. And so with that, and then we also see Bob and I just Boston Rob and Sandra say at Tribal Council, like, oh yeah, everyone is gonna want to take Karishma to final three. So I think it will be interesting. Like, if Karishma can get moves under her belt, if potentially she plays this idol correctly, and like she voted Missy out this episode, that's something in her toolkit for moving forward. I feel like she went from like as Tommy said, the least popular girl in school to literally the swing vote this episode. So I think like if Karishma can get some more social capital in a certain final three scenario, maybe with like Dean and Nora, I feel like Karishma has a fighting chance. Or even if Dan is in the final three, like Karishma, I feel like she's in the middle right now. There's some people that I feel like are definitely below her.
Yeah. I feel like maybe a potential way Karishma could win would be if it was like Karishma, Dean, and Nora. But
Yeah,
like
right?
just like in a general game context, Karishma hasn't been seen doing anything. Like this week was the most that she's ever done for her game, and that was just people coming to her and telling her like, listen, I'm gonna do this thing, you can come along if you want. Like, I think the edit kind of sold it as like Karishma being a swing vote and being super awesome, but it's like she wasn't the one who came up with the idea of voting off Missy. Elaine was the one who came up with it, and I feel like it's just
I feel like
Karishma didn't let Missy talk down to her, but she also didn't clap back to Missy's face. And I feel like that's what she needs in order for her edit to get stronger and for her to have any chance of winning.
yeah, I feel like it's good stuff from Karishma. Like she was the catalyst to have Missy voted out because if Karishma wasn't playing the game or she didn't care or like she doesn't realize what the game is doing or like how to even play the game, maybe she would have went along with Missy and not have had a mind for herself and not have told other people like, "Oh, Missy is being super rude to me. She wants to vote Tommy to someone like Elaine." And I feel like that also goes to show that Elaine has a lot of social capital. We've seen throughout the season, like everyone likes Elaine from the first vote when Elaine almost got booted, but then they switched to Ronnie. Like it could just be that Karishma didn't really have other people to talk to, but then it's also like Elaine is doing, I feel like, good work on bringing Karishma in and making Karishma feel comfortable when like Missy isn't doing that kind of work to bring someone on the outs in.
Yeah, and I think it was really interesting how people highlighted like coming to Karishma with compassion because that was like the only thing that she really understood. Like Karishma doesn't seem to want to be like a huge gamer, and so when people come to her with a like game thing, that's not what she wants. And Elaine kind of said that and was like, Karishma just needs someone to like hold her hand. And I think it's really good on Elaine for like recognizing that. And
Mm-hmm.
I think this is also good for Elaine because a lot of times Elaine has kind of been like, well, what happens will happen. So I think the fact that Elaine was the one to come up with the plan is a good thing for her edit because it's like
Mm-hmm.
she's starting to like call the shots. And I think especially now with Aaron and Missy gone, it's like Elaine's one of the people left who's like more strategic minded, I feel like. So yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like with Elaine, I was glad that Elaine was willing to flip on old Lyro, so the foursome that she went into the tribe swap with, because when we saw Elaine play her advantage on like to keep her foursome safe and then to vote Jason out, I was like, oh damn, Elaine is going to be so steadfast in this foursome. She just saved them after we saw Missy and Aaron wanting to vote Elaine out. So I was a low-key nervous that like she would not be able to flip or be willing to flip and cut those people. So I was glad that this episode, like Elaine was willing to make the move because like she would have been cut first if she didn't have that advantage back when Jason was voted out. So I was like, good for Elaine. You know, she is stepping up her game and she does have an amazing social game.
Yeah. I think Elaine is one of the people that I could see winning the game, but I also could see her getting her throat cut really soon because she's an obvious social threat.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes this season like weirdly interesting, I guess. It's like we've seen a lot of big threats go home, especially pre-merge, and then this episode kind of thing like I feel like the past 4 people voted out with Kelly, Jamal, Missy, and Aaron were all contenders to win the game. And it's funny that in the preview for next week, Dean is like, oh, the GOAT army is assembling because honestly, like low key, that's sort of what it is. It's all of the B team players that are still on the season. And I feel like that's what we see time and time again on Survivor US version, I guess, because it's like right when the merge hits, they always vote out these strong players. And then we're left with the B team people still at the end because it's like no one is going to vote Karishma out now, especially when she's doing her fake sick thing around camp and no one realizes that she has an idol. Like everyone's going to want to bring her to final 3 if they're smart.
Yeah. I'm interested to see if the GOAT army thing like actually plays out though, because it's like if the goats all get together and vote out the interesting people, then we're kind of left with an edge of extinction type thing where the winner is someone we don't really care about. So
yeah, which I think it's so interesting if like a goat army does happen because I feel like so many people are so they don't want to put themselves in the box that like, oh yeah, I'm a goat, I'm ass at this game kind of thing. So that's why I was like, oh, cool. Karishma realizes that she's a goat. She says it in a confessional. And then it's like, okay, I can respect her because at least she knows that she's like not that good at this point and she's doing stuff to make her game better. Versus I feel like other people on the island, if you tell like Nora, hey, you're a goat, she's gonna flip out on you and be like, what the heck are you talking about? No way am I a goat. If you tell Dean that he's a goat, I feel like he would get mad at you. And I feel like similar to in Big Brother 21 when you had like the bottom feeders and then the people in power, no one wanted to be called a bottom feeder because they all wanted to be part of the popular group that was in power. So I'm just interested to see if this can actually work out, if like the losers of the game can get together and do something, but like no one wants to call themselves a loser or bad at the game, you know? So
yeah, and the reason that the losers can kind of get power this time is because there was a twist where the tribes kind of unmerged. I wouldn't say officially unmerged, but they were split into 2 groups. And then they did the immunity challenge in their 2 groups, and then 2 people were voted out. And that was certainly a twist.
I think initial reactions for me when I was like heard it was going to be an unmerging, I was like, oh no. In Ghost Island, we saw an unmerging where they split into 2 and then both went to tribal council kind of thing. And in Ghost Island, we saw that this just alienated the minority more. It's an easy way to pagong people because when you're split into these smaller factions, I feel like it's so easy to just want to cling to your alliance, even if you don't necessarily want to work with them or you don't like them anymore, because might as well just get through tonight's vote, bang, bang, 2 out. Let's just work together for tonight. And then once we're back together, we can infight or whatever. So I feel like I was low-key nervous that it would just be a pagonging kind of thing. And like in Ghost Island, Michael and Jenna went home and I don't know. That's why I was nervous about this. And it was weird 6-5 groupings. Like one tribe had 6 and one had 5. I was like, how were these groupings made? Were they like drawn from a hat or like what? We did not see any of that.
Yeah, and I think it's also like with the groupings, if they were drawn from a hat, it seems likely like that it could have been stacked physically. Like if you're on like a quote unquote tribe with like Aaron, Tommy, and Missy, you can kiss your chances of winning immunity goodbye. And I thought that was interesting. And then the whole thing where he like told them about the reward, like when they had already started the challenge, I felt like it was a little weird, but you know.
Yeah, I wonder if like Jeff mentioned it before and then like he verbally repeated it again, because it seems weird if you're going to like put new rules into the challenge while it's happening, cuz I mean, you know, Alyssa and I have not played the show, but like you're probably not listening to every word that Jeff is saying kind of thing. You're probably zoning him out. So
Yeah, Nora definitely zoned him out because there was the thing where like whoever keeps going the longest, no matter which team, wins their team the reward. And then as soon as Nora like won her team's half, she just dropped. And I thought it was interesting because all of her team was like, man, Nora, but it's like y'all weren't doing anything, so can you really be mad at her? So
Yeah. I feel like the unmerging, I don't know. Low key, I feel like it's an unnecessary twist. Like, okay, sure, you can say that, yes, to be a good survivor player, you need to be able to roll with the punches, be able to navigate any scenario that they throw at you, kind of thing. But, like, if you hit the merge, there's 11 people now, and then you have to be split into groups of 6 and 5 for a vote tonight. I don't know. I just think it could really ruin momentum. And like we didn't necessarily see that this episode where we could have saw Karishma and Janet just go back to back and it would be an easy pagonging of the minority group. But like we did see two good players go home, but like low key, I feel like Aaron and Missy would not have gone home this early if it weren't for a unmerging, which you could say is good or it's bad, but I don't know. I just feel like it's a twist that like determines too much. It's too powerful.
yeah, and I think it's like I understand why they have to do it because it's like it's day 27 and there's still like what 9 people in the game. Like
Yeah,
there's
with 3
still
episodes.
yeah, and it's like if you don't want to go into the finale with like a dozen people, you need to
Mhm.
have like one of these double vote out twists because I feel like they always assume that someone's gonna like get medevaced or something, and then when that doesn't happen, they have to like scramble to get rid of people. So I understand why, but I agree that this twist has the potential to like change the game in a not always like good way. Like I was gonna say fair, because it doesn't seem fair that you could get screwed over just by like picking your name out of a hat or your tribe out of a hat. So
Yeah, I think I'm not a fan of it. I think it's too powerful. So, speaking of, I guess this episode I was sort of like disappointed. Last week we said in our podcast for spoilers for this week was that on Reddit, people were saying that Dan was going to get pulled from the game. So going into this episode, I was like, okay, that would be interesting if Dan is pulled from one tribe, that tribe doesn't go to tribal, and then the other tribe goes to tribal. Still, which I felt like would have been unfair and ruined momentum because everyone wanted to vote Aaron out, but then Dan would have went home kind of thing. But like that's another story. It didn't happen. So going into the episode thinking that Dan was going to be pulled and then to not have him pulled from the game and for him to have multiple speaking roles and confessionals and literally like no talk of anything that happened last week, I was like, oh, okay. So we just like erasing everything that's happened last week.
there was talk of what happened last week, and it was Dan asking Janet to apologize to him so they could work together again. And I wanted to puke because I was like, are you really going to pretend that you didn't like just gaslight her all of last week?
You're like,
Like,
it's Janet, it's your fault. You need to apologize to me, and then maybe I won't vote you out.
it was just disgusting. And I was also really, really disappointed that Dan didn't get voted out. And that, like, not only did the players seem to ignore everything that happened last week, but the edits seemed to ignore everything that happened last week. Like, Dan wasn't painted as a villain at all. And it's like, you
Mm.
would have thought that after last week, everything that he like said and did, it would be impossible to have him do anything right. But he was like almost painted as the person who like saved Janet. And I just was really uncomfortable with that. I did not want to see him. I would have preferred if he has to stay on the show at all that he would just have like an invisible edit for the rest of the season until the day he gets voted out. So I was super, super, super disappointed with that.
No, I 100% agree. Like, okay, sure. If you're not pulling him from the game, great. whatever. Spoilers were wrong. That was sad. But then it's like, after all of the backlash, after all of the articles and apologies and everything that the internet happened last week, and it's like, oh, the edit with Dan, he's getting confessionals, being all happy, like, he who, this is the vote for tonight, like, talking at tribal council. I was like, wait, that doesn't really make sense. I feel like people are just going to be like, production, WTF is wrong with you, because, and editing, like, especially after the backlash, like, okay, sure, these videos, these episodes are edited way in advance, and then, you know, they are approved by CBS, and it's like, did no one have a problem with this storyline? And it's like, why is he still getting confessionals? I agree, like, if he's not being pulled from the game, make him have 0 confessionals, make him not talk, cut him out of all the fucking scenes. Like, I do not want to see him on my TV.
Yeah. Yeah. I wish that Dan would have gotten pulled from the game. I still think he could get pulled from the game. I hope it happens, just because, like, he's a slime ball, and every time I see him on my television, I want to look away. And I feel like what we said last week about what did we say last week that I was about to reference? Shoot, I don't
Production doing
remember.
more?
I totally my thought flew out of my head.
Production doing more?
I don't think it was about that. Poopy.
Huh. But yeah, I was just so excited to watch the episode, because I wanted to see how they were going to handle pulling Dan from the game, because literally everyone on Reddit was like, yeah, this is for sure happening. And then Reddit had the 2 boots wrong for this episode. And it's like,
Yeah.
I didn't want spoilers, but when Alyssa told me that, I was like, oh shoot, Dan is getting pulled. I need to go confirm this. And then it didn't happen. I was like, God damn it.
That made me remember what I was going to say. Well,
Oh, yay.
We said last week that, like, it was going to be really hard to watch the rest of the season in light of everything that happened. And I feel like that's even more true with the knowledge that they're apparently just not going to acknowledge it again. Like, the only way I could see it coming up again is if Dan is in the final 3. But
yeah,
I pray to every god that exists that that does not happen.
I was like, final 3, or even at the reunion show, maybe. But I don't know. I feel like Dan could make it really far into the game, because it's like, who is voting Dan out now? And low-key, with Survivor not even mentioning it at all, the Ponderosa videos don't talk about it at all. Like, makes it feel like Survivor is doing it all for views, and they wanted this 2-hour block last week to get them money and get them talked about on television shows. So if you want to hear more about what we talked about, listen to our podcast from last week, where we talked all in depth of this topic. And now I guess it's the week aftermath of the episode.
Yeah. And now there's new things to talk about. So okay, 2 people got voted out, Missy and Aaron, and we're going to talk a little bit about that, and then whether or not them being voted out was the right move.
Yeah, so the first tribe that goes to tribal council is Aaron's tribe, and then they're all for big moves. It's like, yeah, okay, cool. They don't want to vote Janet, but Janet is a threat too, so either way, maybe works. I feel like Aaron has more friends, and so that would make more sense. He's very athletic, so you'd want to vote him out so he doesn't go on an immunity run. Janet also is a threat because she has sort of like friends-ish. Like, I think she could win a jury vote because she is so personable, so she has the social aspect of the game. But right now, Janet doesn't necessarily have that many allies, and maybe that's why you would keep her around. And so I think Dean, you know, being the snake that he is, he wants to keep Aaron around, and we see that. And I was like, okay, it's smart, because Dean is low-key correct that like once the big boys start going, then I feel like we always see this domino effect of the other large males going straight after. So, okay, smart, keep him as a shield. But then I'm like, Dean, you're not good at puzzles and you're not that athletic. So, I mean, I guess you're good at basketball.
Yeah, I think Dean was right to worry about
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, with Aaron gone, if they're going after like meat shields, they'll go for me next. Because I remember when we were both doing our boot lists, that was something we considered when we were
Yeah.
like looking at the physicality of all of the guys. But it's like, I'm glad that Janet didn't go because she's one of the only players that I find tolerable who's left in the game. But yeah, I think Janet is definitely a jury threat,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not confident that this was like their last chance to vote her out. And I feel like with Aaron, he made such a big deal about like, oh, this is the first time I'm going to tribal without an idol around my neck. And I'm like, that's really not something you want to highlight, bud.
Yeah, I think it was interesting because last week we mentioned that, like, okay, Aaron winning the first two immunity challenges of the merge, little bit risky because that definitely paints a target on your back, especially when we've seen Aaron perform really, really well in the pre-merge challenges, shooting the hoops, being the like hero role for these challenges. I was like, huh, people know you're athletic, and I guess if you go into the show with that kind of stereotype already, might as well embrace it, because I feel like with Aaron's body type, it is a little bit harder to like pretend like you're a fat ass and you can't do athletic stuff. So like, okay, makes sense. If Aaron is that body type, he needs to embrace it, otherwise like he gets two short ends of the stick. But yeah, I mean, I feel like Aaron is the right move. It's like a stereotypical merge boot, I feel like a Joe or someone who is really good at challenges that, like, first time they don't win immunity, sure, vote them out. Janet has a good social game, but she doesn't have an alliance. I feel like where the second tribal council, they low key made a mistake is in voting Missy out, because I feel like once you vote Aaron out, you already dehabilitate that alliance of like Missy, Aaron, and Elizabeth. So it's like, why are you taking out Aaron and then Missy back to back when they could have done the Tommy vote at the second tribal after having the advantage of seeing Aaron go to the first tribal, and then sort of break down the Tommy Lauren alliance. And then you also in the first tribal broke down the Aaron Missy Elizabeth alliance, and then now the goats can really come together because they have the majority. But like, that's a lot of forward thinking.
I think it's a lot of forward thinking, and because the second group to go to tribal assumed that Janet was going to be the vote, I feel like they didn't have nearly enough contingency plans in place. I think also a result of this is that Elizabeth got both of her closest allies voted out on the same night, and so that makes her really easy to vote off next, or it now makes her a free agent, and so someone else could pull her into their alliance. So I agree that it would have been good to like take Aaron and Tommy out, because that would have been two strong guys out of the game that made it easier for everyone to win immunity. But I also think that like I'm not sure that um, Missy and Elizabeth's alliance wouldn't continue to be very strong even without Aaron. So yeah.
Yeah, I guess that is true as well. I think it is interesting because, like, in Solitude, if we just look at voting Missy out of the game, I think, like, yeah, that's a great move. Missy, very athletic as well. She won one of the immunities. She has the social capital. We know she plays balls to the wall and can think strategically and play this game. So I think, like, in Solitude, like, yeah, voting Missy out of the game, smart move. I think Missy had good chances to make it far into the game. And I think maybe where Missy's downfall is like she is super hardcore all of the time. And I think like maybe this is an unpopular opinion, but like everything else aside, I feel like Missy, if she were to play again on like a heroes versus villains tribe or heroes versus villains theme on the villains tribe, I would low-key be interested in seeing her play again because I'd want to see how she learned from this time and being so hardcore 24/7 kind of thing to how she can adapt to a returner season.
I think it's interesting because if there was a heroes versus villains season, I would say Missy definitely belongs on the villains more than the heroes, but it's like
Yeah.
she's not a villain in the sense that like there were some villains that like did like were like really mean, and I feel like Missy was never really mean to anyone. She was just intense, with the
Yeah.
exception of last week where she did a morally repugnant thing by using sexual harassment as a game strategy.
Yeah. So, like we saw this episode, Missy telling Karishma what to do. Karishma's not taking it and then walks away. I low-key thought this was funny. Karishma's like, sit down, young girl. And then, like, when Missy is asking her when she wants to talk, Karishma's like, I don't have a watch. And I was like, oh, I mean, okay, on both ends, like, low-key, they're both handling it wrong. Like, Karishma's also a grown woman and she's like, sit down, young girl. It's probably not the best thing to say, but like, it was funny.
Yeah, it was kind of. I didn't like that because just the whole way she was going about it, like you could understand her frustration, but her reaction seemed to be out of proportion with like what Missy was saying to her. And just like, I don't know, I feel like Karishma doesn't really have a lot of room to talk about people like not doing things well, because like basically the entire tribe is frustrated with her, and none of them have ever badmouthed her to her face the way she was like badmouthing me. So
Yeah, that's why I'm like, oh, all of these people are just so interesting. We see Nora bad mouthing Karishma and like these two having a little infighting. It's like, I feel like a lot of strong personalities that like are probably the type A alpha in their daily lives. So coming here and then having to be a beta sometimes is probably not easy. And so that's where we're seeing this tension come ahead where like everyone wants to badmouth everyone else because like they're the alpha and everyone else is a dumbass idiot.
yeah. So they did talk about that in their tribal council, and I wasn't sure how much of their like back and forth was genuine and how much of it was like Missy and Karishma playing up the whole like, or I guess more Missy playing up the whole, oh, I gotta talk bad about you so people will believe I'm still voting for you thing. So
Yeah, I think that's interesting because in the exit email press that Missy and Aaron have done, Missy has said that like her and Karishma had a alliance on the down low and they had a name for the alliance and like they would just not talk ever because they wanted to keep the alliance a secret. And so I think like if that's true, like that's sort of interesting, I guess, but like from the edit what we're seeing, it doesn't seem like they have a very loving connection relationship here. But yeah, I don't know. I think it is interesting. Aaron and Missy both denied doing exit interview, like talking in person interviews, but they agreed to do like email interviews with people. And I think, I don't know, I think that's interesting because this is like the first time players have like denied doing an exit interview, which is like, okay, totally, it's your right to do one or not do one, whatever. But it's like, also given everything else that's happening, I don't know. It's interesting.
I feel like it's almost because of everything else that's happening, like they
Yeah.
don't want to have to then like talk about what happened.
One slip up and then like you're on the hot seat again.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I guess Missy also hanging around tribal council like for 2 minutes after tribal ended and she was voted out. What were your thoughts? Should that be allowed or should that not be allowed?
eh, I feel like there have been worse exits. So
Yeah, I feel like it's such a fine line to walk because like she's voted out of the game and then she's like asking who voted for who and like telling Elizabeth what to do and like to kill Elaine now. And I was like, I don't know, little turned off by it because I was like, okay, you're voted out of the game, but now because you said, oh, Elaine, you voted for me, and Elaine said, yeah, now everyone knows who casted what votes. There's no secrecy around that. And then you gave Elizabeth advice on what she needs to do next. And like, sure, Elizabeth could have had that own thought in her own head to target Elaine now after voting Missy out. But I was like, I don't know. I feel like once you're voted out of the game, like you shouldn't be talking. Same like when you're on the jury, you're not talking kind of thing. So
I mean, we've seen people talk to their alliance members leaving before. Like it happened when what's his face was voted out and Lauren was like crying and they were talking about how they were going to cut Aaron's throat or whatever, and it's like, I mean, we've talked before about how easy it would be to ruin someone's game by being like, so and so has an idol as you're leaving. So I feel like you can't really fault Missy for that. And I think if it hadn't been okay, Jeff would have, like, you know.
Yeah, like we've seen it in the past. Australian Survivor, someone did that, but they didn't know that the person they said it for actually had an idol. They were just saying it to like say it and to cause drama when they were voted out. And I feel like, it just like is very risky because you could literally say whatever you want and screw up people's games and you're already voted out of the game. So I feel like there should be some rules around that because like we're saying, you could go up there and be like, Bob has an idol, vote him out. Or like, Bob lied to you about this, so vote him out. And then it's like, yo, you're on the jury now. Why are you talking?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I feel like if it has the chances to like seriously hinder someone's game, then it shouldn't be allowed. Like Missy's thing, okay, whatever. But like if people start using after they're being voted out as strategy to like further someone's game or to hinder an opposing alliance's game, then I feel like we need a conversation.
Yeah. I mean, that might be something that they talk about like in the future, but I think it's not become so big of a strategy yet that it needs to be discussed. So,
Yeah. Alyssa, if we play or if any people watching play, literally if you vote it out, just spill all the secrets and see if they yell at you.
I think by the time like we would be in a position to play, it would either have been outlawed already or someone else would have already done it. So
yeah. So next time on Survivor, I think it is very weird, interesting because you voted out 2 of the old Lyro 4. Elizabeth is sort of on her own. Elizabeth maybe wants to target Elaine, who I feel like Elaine is with the Dan and Tommy group and with Lauren and them. So, like, is that an majority alliance right now? Because they just took out the opposing majority alliance in the old Lyro 4. I was like, is it fluid? Is it not fluid? I think that'll be interesting. And so I don't know. Goat Army, low key, I would be interested in seeing the losers come together.
yeah, I'm interested to see who they consider a goat though. Just
Yeah.
like Dean was the one rallying them, but like, does Lauren consider herself a goat? Because she could be.
Because I think it's interesting. I think we could argue that Tommy, Lauren, Elaine, and Dan are a majority alliance who you could put a few other people in there, like Nora or someone, if they're like close friends or whatever, because they started on the same tribe together. But yeah, I don't know. They're like the fringe votes of the top core 4.
Yeah, yeah, we'll have to see. I'm interested to see how next week goes, just because I feel like this week was almost intentionally, like, not boring, but intentionally more subdued because of last week's like drama. So I'm wondering if they'll like start hyping things back up again.
Yeah. So thank you all so much for watching. We hope that you all enjoyed. Next week is Thanksgiving, so we will figure out a time to podcast, and we all hope that you have an amazing time next week.
Bye.